Okay, well, welcome everybody. Gosh, we've got a lovely big full house tonight. Lots of new names, which is really exciting. So welcome to Thursday Garden Chat with Garden Masterclass. Noel, Kingsbury and Annie, me, we are Garden Masterclass. And for those of you that are new to what we do have a look at the website, gardenmasterclass.org. Basically, we are, we're all about education and connecting people, and we do a lot online, but we also do a lot of live events. And I just want to mention a few really good things that are coming up soon. In terms of webinars online, we've got a really good webinar next week, all about multi-stem trees with Philip Newwood from Newwood Trees in Devon. And Philip's going to be talking about not only choosing and selecting, but how do you keep the shape? How do you, how do you manage and improve them? Which will be fascinating. And then we also have our second episode, I like to call them, with lovely Caroline Jackson on bad botany. This has been really popular. If you feel like you're a bit late to the party, you can still join. This is a series of webinars with Caroline, who's extraordinarily talented horticulturalist. And if you join late, we can send you the previous episode, so you won't. And then another one that I'd like to draw people's attention to is uncommon woodlander and shade-loving plants. And this is from Far Reaches Nursery in the Puget Sound. Now, that may not be a nursery that everybody knows about, but it's certainly a nursery that you should know about. It is the most extraordinary nursery. I went there not this autumn, but last autumn, and it's just fascinating. And it's run by Kelly and Sue, and it will be absolutely brilliant and so useful. And if you think, well, it's very, very far away from wherever you are, well, actually, the climate over there is quite similar to the climate over here. So that's the uncommon woodlanders, which is coming up soon. So don't discount it just because you think they're miles and miles away. They are they're fantastic. Can't rate them highly enough. Then I just want to talk about some of the live events that we've just launched. So we have a large number of live events on our website, and some of them have been up there for a while. We actually released a few last Saturday for members priority booking, and those will be going online or open if you like, this Saturday. And we're really excited because there's some of these venues and some of the tutors that we're working with, we've wanted to work with for quite some time. So, for example, we've got 3 events at White House Farm. Again, that might not be somewhere that you know about, but if you just have a look at White House Farm website, Maurice Foster is the plantsman. It's an arboretum that he's grown pretty much from seed over 50 years. It's an extraordinary place. And we're going to be doing 3 afternoon visits there during the year to look at his trees and shrubs, and he has the most extraordinary collection of trees and shrubs. We're also doing a pruning day there with Caroline Jackson, so have a look at that. We are also doing a series of 3 days at Surge Hill, which is Tom Stewart Smith's and Tom and Sue's garden up in Hertfordshire. Again, these are 3 days spread throughout the seasons. For those of you who are not familiar with Tom and Sue, well, you probably will have heard of Tom. They have created what they call a plant library there, which is a really sort of almost like a laboratory for perennials and grasses, and some subshrubs as well. And each of our days that are based there, we're going to be looking at different plants on each of those occasions. We will have sessions with Tom, we'll have sessions with Noel, we'll have sessions with Sue and Tom's wonderful team who are based there. So again, do have a look at that. And then the other one I wanted to mention that's up but will be open for booking on Saturday is James Hitchmo and Charlie Harper in the walled garden at Knepp. Again, this is an extraordinary garden designed by Tom Stewart Smith and James Hitchmo, and we will be sort of looking at that, and that's during the summer. That's in June. Very, very exciting. Some things that are on the sort of on the back burner. We're just about to release an event in the garden of Meenraus in the Netherlands, and that will be in the end of June. I'm particularly really excited about that because it's been several years where we've really wanted to have an event there. This is the perfect year to do it because it's the centenary of the garden. And also there has been a book that's just been released, written by Julia Crawford, about Mean Rouse. And if you've never heard of Mean Rouse, you really need to know more about this woman. She is considered the mother of modernist gardens and probably influenced every working designer today, whether they know it or not. Amazing woman. So that's going to be a fantastic day. And then another event that's just about ready to sort of to go online. We're going to have a couple of days in Sardinia where we're botanizing with James Hitchmo and Marco Scano. And that's likely to be mid to end of May. We're just trying to sort the dates out for that and the details. So as you can see, we do, and that's only a little tip of the iceberg of what we offer. So do have a look at the website. There is a lot to sort of digest and look at. There's also lots of recorded material that we've done over the years. At first, it might seem a little bit overwhelming, but I suggest you pour a glass of wine, sit down and work your way through it. If you've got any questions, you can email us. And if you'd like to become, or if you'd like to go on our mailing list, there's a little link there you can just click. And then we send you a monthly update about what's happening. And then, of course, there's a membership scheme which entitles people to quite wonderful discounts, but also priority booking and things like that. So lots to digest, really. Anyway, I'm going to pass you back to Noel, who's going to introduce tonight's guest.
Thank you, Annie. So last summer I was in Poland, spent a couple of weeks in Poland, in Warsaw and Wrocław, and one day I was I was with Małgosia, who runs the Garden Masterclass Polska, our sister organization there. We decided to go to botanical gardens outside Warsaw, and there was a rose trial, and indeed there was the prize giving at the end of the evaluation of that trial. And there were various of our colleagues there from Warsaw Zazen Zieleni, which are the people who manage Warsaw Green Space, for whom I had been doing a workshop. So we all sort of hung out a bit on a nice summer afternoon and watched this prize giving, which went through an enormous number of categories. And it wasn't very long before I realized that there was one chap who was kind of walking up and down to the to get the prize, kind of almost all of them. And at one stage, the person giving out the prizes said, "You might as well just stay here, Thomas, because you're doing so much walking up and down to collect prizes." Thomas, of course, was from Kordes Roses, which is I knew as one of the world's great rose nurseries. So it was interesting to have a very brief chat with him afterwards, and he sent me links to some of his presentations on rose breeding, which I found really very interesting, and made me think that in all the coverage we've done on Garden Masterclass, we've not done a huge amount on roses, because we have to be honest, and and in some ways, roses are a little bit uncool at the moment, aren't they, Annie? Do you think? I mean,
oh, I completely disagree.
Gardening discourse has been so dominated by perennials over the last sort of 10, 20 years that the shrubs and the woody plants are kind of fighting back. And I think we're now beginning to have discussions about getting a much better balance really between the woody elements of gardens and the herbaceous. And of course, that will inevitably mean, we should be paying more attention to roses. And I think it's actually a very interesting discussion to have at some point about, what is the role of roses in ecological planting design, because roses, let's face it, are absolutely central to Western garden culture. And indeed to Islamic garden culture as well. I shall never forget being on the north of Pakistan, very near the Chinese border, right up in the Himalayas, and there was a little hotel garden full of the most wonderful David Austin roses. I mean, there might have been some Kordes roses there as well, but I only recognized the David Austin roses. So they do, of course, grow fantastically well in a lot of these drier climates. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Thomas Proll from Kordes Roses, who is going to be telling us about the Kordes company and the modern business of breeding roses. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having me, Annie and Noel, and thanks to all of the others joining in tonight. I'm really pleased. It's such a big group of people. So you want me to start?
Yeah.
Good. So you see the slides?
Yeah, all loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone again for joining in and for the pleasure for having me. Just a little brief introduction, a little history of Kordes. I think at least those of you who have joined in for the roses tonight have heard the name Kordes before. This is where we are. So this is a little about 30k northwest of Hamburg. So quite coastal climate where we are, rather sandy soil. So what actually the glaciers of the last ice age went over. So pretty flat part of the country and rather sandy soil. Formerly the largest nursery area of the world, actually, but that's a long time ago. Mostly tree nurseries in our region. Yeah, just some little history. The history of Kordes roses goes actually back to 1887, when this gentleman, we have only that photo of him when he was a little bit older already. Actually, he wasn't even 22 when he took the big adventure of founding his own nursery. William Kordes the first, he produced roses in small amounts, but was also growing fruit trees and other crops. We are not really sure he was a rose breeder already, might be, might not, but we would need a time right to find really out, because the first roses released by Kordes are listed under his son's Herman's name, but maybe it was him, so the owner breeding those roses. This is the oldest photo we have, taken at the old facility close to Emshorn. This is taken about 1900, so typical old nursery house as they had them back then, and the rather simple greenhouse structures you can see there. And in the foreground of the photo is actually rose crops we can see. The company really took off with the second generation, and that was, as I said, two brothers were Herman, who mainly took care about sales and stuff. But one of the most famous rose breeders of the world became later on William Kordes II. But funny enough, maybe typical for a 21, 22-year-old lad, he wasn't too crazy about joining a business with his father and his brothers. So he and a friend actually went over to England to found a rose nursery. And not too long ago, we found that rare copy of this catalog. I don't know if many more copies have survived. Probably it's the one he sent home to his parents. And you can see, unfortunately, the timing to found a rose nursery in England wasn't the greatest. It was right before World War I. And so he and his friend Max Krause were imprisoned as prisoners of war without having ever carried a gun on Isle of Man. And but later on, he had to move home. Had lost all the expansions, and finally joined the business with his father and his brother. We have this old photo. We can definitely say it's taken 1957, because this is a construction here. This is the first cool store built. So that was a revolutionary thing in a tree nursery back then, to have a cool store where you could store the roses in the winter. And all those tiny little greenhouses were the only greenhouses they had back then. And this is the kindergarten of many famous rose varieties of those times. And here we have William Kordes again as an older gentleman, joined by his son Reimer Kordes. And that was a period these two gentlemen did the rose breeding during the 50s. And during the 50s also, probably the most famous Kordes rose was introduced, was released. And this is a rose called Schneewittchen, or all of you probably know it better under its name, Iceberg. So that was released in 58. A rose we have a kind of a love-hate relationship with today. Of course, it's a legend that has spread the name Kordes all around the globe. but on the other hand, it's quite susceptible to all kinds of diseases. I always like to say it's a rose that doesn't know what to get first, black spot or powdery mildew. But again, it's a living legend, and in the southern hemisphere with a more hot and dry region, it still works fine. So I'm sorry I have to skip 2 generations because we want to talk a little more about breeding and roses tonight. So this is the current management. So Tim Herman is a member of the 4th generation, and the other 2 gentlemen, John and Alexander, they are already members of the 5th generation. The 3 are running the company today. And I'm glad I can be with them for almost 28 years now doing the garden rose breeding. This is how it looks today. Lots of more greenhouses and for testing cut flowers, producing roses. Here we have packing sheds and cool stores and everything. So this is how the company, the nursery, looks today. And I know you have spoken in other chats more detailed about rose breeding already. So my dear friend Michael Marriott was with you before, and you bothered him to try to tell more about rose breeding. And at least you will not bother me to talk about garden design. I'm totally fine with that. So it's very easy. You pollinate some roses, and a little later you get hips, and then you get seedlings, and then you can start the trialing. The trialing, the rose evaluation at Kordes, as you can see it here on the field with many thousand rose varieties, is done with no fungicides since more than 30 years now. So actually in 1990 was a big move in the breeding at Kordes. They decided to stop spraying fungicides in the trials, and that was a big adventure back then. Our breeding goals today would be definitely the resistance against the fungal diseases, definitely on number 1. So we talk about black spot, the mildew diseases, and rust. Winter hardiness is still important issues we have to take care of. Our winters get more and more crazy, lots of temperature shifting up and down. So that's always a challenge. Even our part of the country is, we are coastal climate, so we can definitely have very late frosts, and we can partly also have deep frosts. This year we were already down to something like -12, -15, I would say. Heat tolerance is something in the past we said is something for Southern Europe, but we all know recent years have brought really hot, dry summers to us, thanks to climate change. So we also have to take care of that. What do we want from a rose concerning flowering? We want to have many flowers. We want to have the flowers keeping a long time on the plants. We would love to have clean dropping of old blooms easily, and all of that even in the rain. And that is actually something we could normally try pretty nicely in our region, and since we are known to have a good amount of rainfall. And the color intensity we would like to have in the blooms, and this is something that somehow relates with the heat tolerance, and something we could easily find out during last couple of years. And we could now talk on forever about flower characteristics. There's definitely trend colors. We could talk about there is flower shape, big differences in flower shape. Just to say, for almost a century, the high-scented hybrid tea was probably the ideal of a rose. Before the David Austin roses came and brought the nostalgic shape, as we like to call it today, brought it back into business. A little earlier for you, probably in England, but also the David Austin roses definitely arrived in the, let's say, mid-1980s. On the German market, and all the rose breeders had to react and also breed roses of a similar style back then, because it became so much in fashion. And definitely fragrance, very important for many people. So I would say fragrance, yes. If you complain now it's too far back in the list, I would agree. We could easily move it up, but we could only move it up here or put it next to the disease resistance. But because everything we admire in roses only works together with the disease resistance. That's our philosophy of breeding. So it's always a package. All beauty can only shine from a healthy body, and this is really what you have to do in rose breeding. Create a robust, healthy plant, and then we can put all the beauty and all the fragrance on top. Growth characteristics, I mean, the gardens get smaller and smaller, so, and people don't plant that single rose beds anymore. What we have more and more smaller gardens, and you have mixed borders, like you call it, mixed with perennials and other plants. So many roses end up with just one plant, and that plant needs to have a nice shape, a nice habit, and nice branching. So that's what we expect from a rose variety these days. Still, most of the roses are propagated by grafting, by budding on a rootstock, but I'm not so sure it will be the same in 10 or 15 years from now. So you can also, of course, propagate roses from cuttings on their own roots, but not every rose is happy on its own roots. So this is something we have to trial as well. And finally, everyone who is familiar with roses, or the rosarians with us tonight, they know very well what a bareroot rose is. But many people just buying their roses in garden centers on the mass market, they are more used to containers. They are not familiar with bareroot roses anymore. So we need to trial, is a rose happy being grown in a container or not? And it's definitely not the case for all the roses. Also, very quickly, just to give you a brief idea, this is how we select the roses. And to shorten this up, it takes roughly 10 years. So we start the selection in the greenhouses with, maybe remember this number. This is only for the garden roses. Our breeding program is much bigger because it includes cut flower roses and greenhouse pot roses as well. But we start roughly with 200,000 seedlings. And then we go into a 2-year rhythm on the field. And first we go 3 plants per variety. Then we step onto 10 plants, and we step onto 100 plants, and then we step onto 1,000 plants, and then we are ready to bring some roses, maybe 15 varieties, to national and international rose trials. And then finally, roughly in the 10th year, we go into mass propagation with a couple of thousand varieties and can offer the roses to the market. And then, something like 5 to 10 varieties per year will end up in the catalog. So in 10 years, we shrink the number of 200,000 seedlings down to 5 to 10 varieties that end up on the market. This is all about the rose breeding and the evaluation. So this is how the garden rose production looks in our region. This is a beautiful rose field on a sunny day. You can see. In the past, I always had to say, people, no, this is not photoshopped. We have a couple of days with just blue sky with no clouds. But I can tell you, in some of the recent years, we had that too long and too many of those days, and it was really hot and dry. And I mentioned we have rather sandy soil. So this is tough for all our vegetation if it doesn't rain every couple of weeks. So anyway, this is how it looks. And so this is the end of the childhood of the roses, and they end up in catalogs. So those of you who are still old school and like to have a piece of paper in their hand, we are still printing a catalog from year to year, but it's a smaller and smaller quantity, because many people are happy just with the online version, and you will find all our garden roses under rosen.de, and there's an English version on our website as well. Okay, that was a brief run through the rose breeding we are doing, and I would like to introduce you, just to give you some ideas for your your interesting questions I'm waiting for. I would like to introduce you to some of the rose groups. We have all those groups here. This is the German versions. In other parts of the world, they are named slightly different. But this is actually kind of, we call them collections, kind of marketing groups. They are not too much made for the retail market, for the private customers, but also for the wholesale market, actually. And some of those, a few of those groups I would like to introduce you to. And one that is probably our most successful our most successful group over the recent years is the Parfuma collection, where we successfully combined a high level of disease resistance with strong fragrance. And here we have a couple of them. In the German version, all the varieties are named after female personalities, but we had to change the names because it doesn't mean too much to you. So the name first here, this is a name you will find on the English market. So this one here is Adorable Parfuma. Probably the highest level in the combination of disease resistance and fragrance I've been able to achieve. Here's one fruity Parfuma, smells like rhubarb, which is very, very special in roses. And by the way, this logo here, that label you can see here is the logo of the German ADR trials that are named the toughest rose trial of the world. A title we haven't given those trials, but people from other countries actually. It's 11 trial stations all over Germany with no fungicide used. So it's a really tough trial. And you can see many of the roses I will show you have received this award. Another one with a strong aniseed fragrance is Glorious Parfuma. Lovely Parfuma is one of my favorites. Has aniseed fragrance as well, but combined with a fruity apple fragrance. Raspberry Parfuma is rather new, a couple of years old already, called Fräulein Maria in Germany. I'm sorry, time is too short to tell you all the background about the German names. One of our most successful releases over the last years is probably Royal Parfuma, because the color very much attracts people, the shape, it's a very healthy rose, and on top it's an intoxicating fragrance. It merely makes you addicted to a really lovely, very complex fragrance. Secret Parfuma is another one. Okay, another group I would like to mention is actually nothing too special in breeding. It's more like a kind of collecting box for all kinds of unusually colored Floribunda roses that we call the Fantasia collection. In the past, German customers weren't too crazy about striped roses, but we have a new generation moving into the gardens as well. And the younger people, they seem to like those crazy colored roses very much. So Abracadabra we have for a number of years already. And another one is Airbrush, which is really, the name is Program, looks really a bit like it's airbrushed, and it's a very colorful rose, but still it's not susceptible at all. It's a very healthy rose, and very colorful too. I know garden designers are not too crazy about those colors. They would probably prefer something more stable in color, but I can tell you the buyers in garden center, they love that type of roses, because that's what people love to have and to buy. Even it's difficult to design your garden with. Here, Noel, and this is a rose that won the award. That's what you mentioned before. That was a day when we met. That's the reason I put this rose in. It's für Elise or Pour Elise or For Elise or whatever you call that short piano play by Ludwig van Beethoven. It's a rose dedicated to the 250th birthday of Ludwig van Beethoven. And here it is. This is actually what happened back then in Warsaw. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not showing off with this. For me as a breeder, all those rose trials, they are not about the trophies. They are about results. They give me results, how a variety performs in different kind of climates. And Warsaw, where we met, is very continental. It's a tough climate, very cold in winter. So it means a lot to me if a rose receives the gold medal, the fragrance award, the public award, and on top the amber rose. Many rose trials have a golden rose, and our Polish friends thought, oh, that is kind of boring. We want to have something different. And a lot of amber can be found at the coast of the Baltic Sea, so they give this amber rose. Here's one. That year it was with milky amber, very nice one. And funny enough, the Warsaw trial was one of the last in the European season of trials. It was a pretty late trial in August already. And the earliest trial in the Southern Hemisphere takes place in Adelaide. And yeah, how you see this, the Rose did the same thing again down under. So this is the Adelaide Rose trials, and it won the Australia's Rose of the Year title and some more title. Here we see the bunch of rose, and this is Elton Treloar of our Australian agency Treloar Roses and his sales manager Lauren. And by the way, all those trophies here are for Kordes roses as well. But I said I didn't want to show off. Sorry. So again, Fantasia, another striped one we have released this year. This is a brand new rose, but again, a very healthy one too. Nordica is a color we would call mauve. Nice rose, popular one too. And Meteor is a rose I would like to mention because it's Rose of the Year in the UK right now at the moment. It was announced last year, so it's always announced 1 year earlier. So we see here the Rose of the Year launch, Waterbury Gardens. I don't know if Ian Kennedy is with us tonight, the gentleman we see here, but he definitely said he want to watch the chat on YouTube later on. So a very important award in the UK given every year. And another one in the Fantasia group is Volcano, or Volcano, and so the spell is slightly different in Germany and in English. And luckily we have a new rose trial after the St. Albans garden unfortunately had to be closed a couple of years ago. And thankfully the Rochefort nursery is running rose trials now again in England. And the first edition was finally judged in 21, and we received that award with Volcano. So another one I would like to mention briefly is what we call the climate roses in Germany, but we translated that a little different into sunflower roses. And this is a selection I made actually from my experience from traveling around the world. What of our rose varieties deal very well with heat and dry conditions. So one of those is Baby Schneewittchen, or we call it Baby Iceberg in English. So similar to the old legendary iceberg, but more compact and definitely more healthy in foliage. Bright Smiles is another one that will be released to the English market soon. And Flamingo is another one we were able to win the main award at the Rochefort Rose Trials with last year, last summer. And it's a kind of salmon orange colored floribunda that also has received before the reward of the German Rose Trial. Gardener's Friend is one that we have on the market for a while already, but takes all kinds of weather, all kinds of temperature, humid, rainy, hot, dry, and keeps the color all the time. It's a really tough rose. Phoenix is another one in the Sunflare collection. And one of my personal favorites, even I'm not supposed to have an own taste actually as a rose breeder, is Rose Romantic. I very much like the color display of the creamy flowers turning more and more salmon red, the more UV light hits the flowers actually. And you can see a very insect-friendly variety on top. And insect-friendly is a very good topic and leads us over to the next group. And I can tell you it's during the time I'm doing this job as a rose breeder now, almost 30 years, that was the quickest change of trend I have experienced. And that happened around in Germany around 2016, 17. Roses with low petal count and single flowers, just 5 petals, were so hard to sell and almost impossible. And it changed overnight. And it was when the a vivid discussion about declining insect populations started. And a lot of people wanted to go for more natural gardening and plant pollinator plants in their garden. And also suddenly roses with just single flowers like this one, Alexander von Humboldt rose. They got very, very popular. And it was not only the retail customers, it was a wholesale market, it was a garden centers asking for full collections. And so we started that nectar garden collection, as we called it. Later on, we got lessons from beekeepers who told us that roses actually have pretty much only pollen and not too much nectar. But we loved the name. We found it pretty sexy, so it stayed. And you can always plant the roses in combination with perennials, and those definitely have nectar. That rose is quite popular in England for many years already. That's Grouse 2000 in Germany. We call it Medeo, a nice single-petaled ground cover. One of the newer ones is Lemon Fizz, keeping the color very well, and also very healthy rose, bringing you at least 3 flushes a season. And a very popular color also is that violet lilac type flowers are very popular with many customers. It's called Weg der Sinne. That's called after a hiking trail in Germany, and that then came the name in the US. They have the Pacific Crest that goes all along the west coast up from the south to the north. So we used that name, and it was actually, funny enough, never used in the US so far, but we now use it in the UK. Silver Ghost is also known in England for quite a while. We call it Eskimo. And I just want to say we were a bit naive in the beginning, putting this rose in the collection, and then we had to find out it's actually not interesting for insects at all. They were visiting all kinds of other roses. They preferred those to this variety, and we had to find out it actually has not much pollen. So we took it out of the group again. We have another collection we call the Hedge Charmers, and that's, you can see why. It's a perfect rose to plant a hedge with, but it's out of the nectar garden group now. Another one is Starry Sky, recently introduced also in the UK, Sternenhimmel in Germany. That's what you call a patio rose. It's super patio rose, you know. Grows like a football, as we like to say. This is something you would like to have for your smaller garden situations. Another colorful rose is Summer of Love in that collection, and the brand new, another striped one, but the first striped with single petals, having a nice color combination of red and white. And also this rose has already been awarded in the German Rose Trial. Anyway, another group I would briefly like to mention. Sorry?
I think somebody's got their microphone on. I'm just going through it. I'll check.
Yeah. I'm almost done, and we will have time enough for questions later on. So Persica hybrids you have definitely heard about before, and I will have to say I'm for sure no pioneer in this group. One of the and the pioneer probably is Jack Harkness, who played around with that species rose already back in the 70s. Another gentleman like Peter Ilsing from the Netherlands, or my fatherly friend Chris Warner, who definitely brought more disease resistance into that type of rose. So this is the species rose. Actually, the botanists always struggle. Is it a rosa or is it Hulsemia? Because it's actually a subgenus of rosa. And it's a species rose native in the deserts and belts from Iran to Afghanistan in the south, and from Central Asia to Western Siberia in the north. So it's actually a desert plant. And as a desert plant, it's thorny like crazy, you know, because there's not much to eat in the desert and you don't want to be eaten. And it's not a very beautiful rose. It has dull bluish foliage, and of course it's only once flowering. So a lot of work had to be done first to make this species into a garden plant. And the gentleman I just mentioned did a lot of work on that. And I jumped on the train something like, I would say something like 10 years ago, maybe a little longer. And this is the first release we made, See You in Purple. And if you're familiar a bit with persicas, you know they pretty easily drop their petals, and you never really get a full flush with many of the variety. And see what this one is doing. This is actually a photo taken at the Hague International Rose Trials, and this is a bed a bed of 80 plants. You may say maybe a little boring, but nice to play to test roses. And you can see this variety keeps the petals almost forever. And in the end, they turn green, and you have to take your secateurs and just cut them off. The others in our selection so far are See You in Pink. So that funny name actually originates from, because all the names with I and eyes in were already taken. So we had to think about something different and called our collection the See You collection. See You in Red also came on the market in 2019, followed by in 2021 by See You in Rosé. So this is our latest release and one to come. I know. I've seen you, Daniel, in the Daniel Mayhill is in the audience today. He carries the UK National Collection of Persicas, and I just sent him one of the plants of See You in Apricot. He was very happy about. And this is one to come officially next autumn on the market. So very, very nice, unique color. Of large flowering climbers, I would like to mention only one. We have recently released, this is Peach Melba, and the reason I would like to show it because it's a Rose of the Year as well. And that one is Rose of the Year 2023 in the UK. So that was actually launched in 22. We have it on the market already a little bit longer. I've never stopped breeding for large flowered climbers, but I have reduced the breeding program on those a little. But there's great stuff in the pipeline to come next couple of years. But I have also focused on breeding a bit more on ramblers. And people are crazy about ramblers, but you need, for most of the classic types, you need a huge garden, and you need that typical old apple tree you put your rambler in. But people have smaller gardens, so they would have liked to have reblooming types and not growing so vigorous, and also have colors that have not been around with the traditional types. So here, this is the comparison we need to have to understand the concept of the group. This is an old rambler some of you might know. Better not mess up with Bobby James. So sometimes people ask, how do I prune it? And the answer is leave it. Yeah, don't start a war with that one. It will succeed anyway. So this is probably it can grow up to 8 to 10 meter or whatever. So that's not what you want if your garden is on the smaller side. So this is a typical growth of a Silhouetta rose, as we call them. I'm something a little above 180. So what is that in foot? Maybe 6 foot or something like that. This is taken in Baden-Baden in the south of Germany on a hillside. So this is actually taller. I would normally see it, but this is maybe 2.50 meters. But normally we say the Silhouetta range goes up to something like 2 meters. And on top, it's great for the wholesale market, because a garden center would probably struggling having a Bobby James available, because they can't keep it in a container. But a Silhouetta rose you can put in a container. It flowers in the container, and you can put it nicely in the sales at the point of sale. It makes a nice display. In the UK, the Silhouetta range ended up under the Peterbilt brand, just to show you where you find them. And because they were found, it's a pretty nice range, and it fits the typical style of what is offered under the Peterbilt brand name. So here we see Crimson Silhouetta. This is how it typically looks. This is in the German rose trellis. This is 3 plants put on this trellis here. Lavender Silhouetta is a very nice one with some fragrance. Received the German ADR trial. Very nice floriferous rose. A real magnet for insects and pollinators is Sunny Silhouetta with more open flowers. One of my favorites, because it's never-ending blooming and very, very floriferous, is a Sweet Silhouetta, also with some nice fragrance. Even more fragrance has Romantic Silhouetta. That's a rather tall grower with a little larger flowers, but very, very nicely blooming. with a strong first flush, but not so strong, but still a second flush, is Purple Silhouette, and one pretty new to the market is Perfumey Silhouette we see here. It's actually the type of perfume that just waves around the air. You know, if you walk through your garden and you smell something and you can't recognize in the beginning where it's coming from, that type of fragrance, it's like a cloud swinging around the plant. And the last one in the selection is brand new. And if those of you familiar with roses and especially ramblers know that yellow is still a very rare kind of color in the ramblers. So this rose, Lemon Silhouette, will hopefully get a lot of attention because it's really something brand new and unique. So this was a little, sorry, it was a little more than just 20 minutes, but I thank you for listening. And now I'm ready for your questions. I'm moving my screen now, and now we are back.
That's
Great,
it.
thank you,
Yeah.
Thomas. That was really interesting. Yes, we've got some questions, and I've got a huge, big, long list of questions. But anyway, first of all, Lois Moss, who is one of our regulars, she's a docent at the Portland International Test Garden in Oregon, USA, which she says was founded in 1917 when French rose growers worried about wartime damage sent their cuttings to a colleague in Portland. Our docent script says what we think of as modern roses weren't developed until 1867. Any thoughts on that? And she then goes on to ask whether the Portland Rose Society is currently the oldest surviving rose society in the world.
Well, could well be. You know, I'm struggling a little with that fixed date, 1867. That was it said when the first hybrid tea, La France, was put on the market. But just an easy question: if I take two heritage roses, two old roses, and cross them with each other, what do I get? After that definition, I get a modern rose, yes, but it's definitely not no modern rose. So as human beings, we like to put everything into structures, you know, but we are dealing with children of Mother Nature. So I would say, yeah, if it helps someone, you could go for 1876 as starting date, but I wouldn't take it so seriously.
No. I was just trying to think of that, Annie. Can you think of it? The Jennifer Potter, that very exhaustive history of the rose.
No, I can't. I'm sorry.
No, it came out about 12 years ago, maybe.
Somebody might know who's watching.
That'd be the book to look at. So Jennifer Potter. I'm sure it was her who wrote it. Question from Mikhail in Poland. Dear Thomas, this year I test 50 of your varieties in containers. Will they have survived minus 18 degrees Celsius?
Yeah, I mean, in a container is a different story than in the ground, of course, because the frost can hit them much harder. So that will be, but in general, hardiness is a very complex topic, and you know, very often people like to they prefer simple answers to difficult question, and hardiness isn't that simple. Depends a lot where you are. Hardiness can differ if you are in continental climate, if you're close to the coast, or if you're in high elevation. And the same rose might react different on those different kinds of frost. And so everyone needs to find out. Actually, we need the slow roses. We need the roses that are not triggered easily and start too early going into shoots and bloom. And that's what you need to. You need to have slow starters. That's a hardy roses actually in the end.
That's a very interesting point. I mean, they're very interesting criterion. Is that something that is, I mean, how easy is it to find that out if you were researching rose varieties for a project?
Yeah, actually, it's. I mean, you have them on the trial ground, as I told you, for 10 years, and hopefully, Mother Nature has helped you sorting out the ones that are too weak, and you can only continue breeding with the ones that survive. So I would say our roses are rather hardy. You can always go for a more for a stricter selection if you want something for the very continental, you know.
Right.
But
Yes.
normally, I would say we are in a pretty good range with most
Yeah.
of our.
I should imagine you would be. Yes. 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 Wendy from South Carolina wants to know: are any of your roses available in the United States?
Yes, actually, quite a bunch. Yeah. So our agency we have recently changed to a couple of years ago with Star Roses and Plants, and you will find many with the typical mail order businesses, but also Palentine up in Ontario, Canada. They carry quite a large assortment, and they deliver into the US as well.
Good. Yep. Now I was interested that you had using Rosa persica in breeding, and as I understand it, Central Asia is pretty much a centre of genetic diversity for roses. And in my one trip to the region, Kyrgyzstan, a few years ago, I remember a couple of locations we were on hillsides with what I could only describe as rose scrub, where rose species were far and away the dominant woody vegetation, with this incredibly diverse herbaceous flora below. And of course, you have to be very careful because otherwise you just get impaled very quick. And of course, the bringing in of all members of the gene pool is one of the things that drives plant breeding forward. I mean, have you been working with any other Central Asian roses?
Oh yeah, of course. When Kordes made that move into more disease-resistant roses, we of course took a number of species, you know, to bring back in more disease resistance after many decades using too many chemicals. I mean, Rosa Vicerana is one, Rosa multiflora, of course, is one and Rosa rugosa is one of those sources for disease resistance. But there would probably be many more. We have some barriers in the chromosome level of roses that doesn't make it so easy to use it all for breeding. But I think my professor at university always told me that only 5% of the rose species are in our modern garden roses. So that means that actually 95% are still not used in there. But it's a long, tough way to bring in new species because we want to have the roses reblooming all the time today. I mean, that means they should bloom on first year wood instead on older wood like in the species. So, and that is the first barrier. It takes you several generations to get rid of that, and that's not so easy.
Thomas, how scented is the Rosa persica? Is it very scented?
Not very much.
No, I mean they're mouth-wateringly beautiful, but I just wondered if they were scented as well.
Yeah, they have some little, but it's more that typical white rose scent. It's not that strong, and you would probably need more petals typically because more petals brings you more fragrance.
Right.
But if you put more petals in a persica, you can't see the blotch in the center anymore. So it's just the persica needs to have 5 petals or maybe up to 10, and that's it. Otherwise, you can't see the beauty actually.
On a related question about new genetic material, John wants to know: has there been any work done with US native species such as Rosa setigera, Virginiana, or Woodsii?
Yeah, Virginiana definitely, and I think our American friends are definitely familiar with the buck roses, the Griffith buck roses, and he has also worked with some species back then to make them tougher. Setigera, I'm not aware now, but might be. As I said, it's there are lots of ideas that sound great in the beginning, are not so easy to realize. Then I played a lot around with species, and many of the breeding lines didn't bring me any further. Then it's a bit trial and error.
Of course, yes. Which is part of the interest of plant breeding, is that extraordinary science and art, which is what I find so fascinating about it. Mika again in Warsaw wants to know, Thomas, what is the optimal size of a container in your opinion?
Oh, that depends a little on, you mean a container for production or to keep them, you know? Production, we are mainly typical nursery is probably in 5 liter. But otherwise, I would say it should be at least 20 or 30 liters, so a really nice big pot. And then I would always say, if that is your way to keep the roses, leave them in 2, maybe 3 years, and then take them out and give it new soil. That's always best to have a rose. A lot of people have roses on their terrace or balcony, and wondering they are not doing so well anymore. And then you ask them, for how long do you have them in? Oh, I have them for 7 years now. And then that's no wonder, in the garden soil, the plant will still do well, but in a pot it needs new soil from time to time.
And I think, Thomas, actually, you were saying about designers, shying away from the strong colors. I think you'll find that a lot of designers actually are, using and craving those wonderful, really sultry, mouth-watering colors. You only have to go to Great Dixter to see how roses are incorporated into, really vibrant color schemes. And also, Noel was saying earlier on, but I tend to disagree that there are a lot of designers also using roses now almost like a matrix shrub within planting. I've heard Nigel Dunnett talk about this, and Dan Pearson, where they're using roses as a sort of structure, but this sort of color coming through in quite a rough planting. But I think those really hot, vibrant colors, I think you'll find they're going to be really popular.
Yeah, I mean, this is I just remember, this we had a big gardening exhibition in Germany, close to Hamburg. This one that running all summer long, and when it was all about the planning, the organizers brought us together with the garden designers planning the roses, and there was the one garden architect giving a talk about he was responsible for the roses, and he said something, it was along a canal, and he said along the canal he would put the popular colors like white and pink and red, and he would put the unpopular colors on the short ways like apricot and orange. And the rose grower said, what is he talking about? Because apricot and orange are for us the best sellers,
Yeah, yeah. No,
and later on, we got to know each other better and talked, and we had totally different perspective of things, because unpopular for him meant difficult to design with.
Oh, right.
He doesn't care at all about sales or whatever. That's not his world, But and then we said we are talking a total different language. So that's my memory about that. Yeah.
There's a question from Christine. She's saying Peter Beals had a species rose collection gathered from his travels. Did you have any liaison with him over his collection at all?
No. Unfortunately, Peter passed away a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, shortly after, his daughter Amanda. Very sad story. So I met him several times, but it was always on conventions or whatever, where you never had really time to go into a deeper conversation. Unfortunately, no.
There's also another interesting question from John, who's asked a couple of questions. Are you breeding any roses to include proliferation, i.e. green centers?
No, not really. It happens sometime. And, Kordes is breeding cut flower roses as well. And in cut flower, we have put a line actually on the market. And the florists, they love to have it in bouquets and stuff like that. But in garden roses, we are always hesitating. We have one rose, actually, the one I showed you, the meteor rose, that is actually the actual rose of the year. When, proliferation is also a reaction on heat very often, or on extreme conditions. And that meteor rose is when later on in summer, it has perfectly normal flowers, but in early summer, when the nights are still cool, it tends to have those proliferation. But actually, if I find it in a rose variety, I would hesitate to put it on the market only. It's too special. I mean, breeding for Kordes means I have to please the mass market. All the very unique and very special things, all the amateur breeders can take care of. But I would say a lot of normal people would say, oh, has that made with genetical engineering? Is that something, something poison or whatever? Or is that a disease? In the end, people want roses that look like roses.
Yeah. There's an
That's
interesting question.
that's the lesson we learned.
Sorry, there's a question here from, well, somebody called Blue Whisper, but that's their email. So grateful for these healthy roses. I do have a problem with Japanese beetles in mid-coast Maine. Lucky you being on mid-coast Maine. Do you have
Once you've
any?
got Japanese beetles,
Yeah, well, I think I'd put up with the beetles to live on mid-coast Maine. Do you have any help about the beetles? And then goes on to say, Bliss Parfuma is just wonderful rose here in Maine. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Any solution to those pesky beetles?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, I know, I heard the problem very often. We don't have them. They are not native to our region. And breeding for disease resistance always means, I mean, some people you have to explain, means to breed against fungal diseases, but against the pests, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I have no solution, unfortunately.
Right.
But we have all kinds of other beetles too, and often I'm asked about a deer. Can you breed roses resistant to deer? And I always say, they are in my tri field as well. Actually, right now at the moment, probably because I saw one yesterday afternoon. And even if you would take they definitely have taste. So some roses must taste better than others. So they probably nibble here, nibble there, but they go to certain. But if you take the ones that taste best away, they will take the second best.
Oh, right. So they'll still eat them.
I would always say, if you go to a buffet and the shrimps are gone, the people will eat the meatballs anyway in the end.
Yeah. Lovely. And there's a question. Where is it disappeared now? There was a question
about boggy soils.
Yeah, that's the good one. Boggy soils. Any roses that really grow in very wet soils?
No, not really. I mean, we have when I spoke about climate change before, I'm always warning people, please don't reduce climate change just to heat and drought. We can have the opposite too. Actually, last summer we had that. If it's really wet, I mean, it's a lack of oxygen, and the rose also needs oxygen around the roots. So if it's getting too bad, but roses are tough. I mean, they take drought quite well because they're rooting very, very deep.
Yeah.
And also they take very wet conditions and flooding for a while, but not forever. I mean, if it stays too long, the water, they will also start suffering.
Well, John has come up with, I think, a solution for these pesky beetles. He's saying use a semi-annual application of milky spore in the spring and autumn when the beetles are at the grub stage in the grass. I have no idea what milky spore is, so
and we've got a solution for deer. Now, has anyone heard of Irish spring soap? Because I haven't. It's very effective. They hate the scent. And certainly I've also heard this about soaps that contain, I think, like coal tar.
Oh, I've seen Irish Spring. It's very, very strong, smelly. It's almost, it's really kind of like almost industrial soap, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, my mom has trouble with the deer as well, and she tried all kinds of stuff and ended up with buttermilk. But you have to apply it almost every day, and it doesn't make your foliage look much nicer. But they definitely don't like the smell of that one. But the slightest rain is enough to wash it away. So you have to repeat it all the time.
But I mean, the good thing about a bar of soap is it doesn't, it'll take a long time for that to reduce. But they're saying they hate the scent. We place whole bars tied up to a stake here and there by the plants. My goodness me, I think that's revolutionary. I think that could. Let's spread that around the world. That's brilliant.
Buy shares in the company now.
Yes, quickly.
Just imagine how that garden looks with all the soap there, Mama.
It smells. It'll stink of coal tar.
Yes.
Some old industrial.
But brilliant. Plant. I love that. I will pass that on. I will pass that on. There's somebody saying I use a product called Liquid Fence, very smelly, and spray around the perimeter of the yard every week. Goodness me, wonder what's in it.
Yeah, but if it's smelly, I don't know if that's a garden you want to have the barbecue in or whatever.
I know. I say get a couple of lurchers and then you might have a deer problem. They'll see to that for you. Okay, well, it's gone 7 o'clock, and I think
Better
and
run.
it's actually gone 8 o'clock for you, hasn't isn't it, Thomas? So it's probably
I did notice that quite a lot of people have joined us throughout the talk quite late. Just a reminder that this will be on the Garden Masterclass YouTube channel as a recording tomorrow.
right.
Okay, so you can catch up with it if you missed part of it.
Yeah.
So Thomas, thank you very much indeed. This
Yeah.
is really interesting. It's been a sort of, a new audience and a bit of a new world for us. No, really, really fascinating. And
Lovely.
well, thank you so much for your time. And
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure talking to you and for you. And whenever you need an update on the roast breeding, then I'm fine.
Wonderful.
With
Wonderful.
talking again.
Well,
Great.
thank you, Thomas,
Thank
and thank you to everybody who's new, who's joined in. Have a look at the website and discover all the wonderful things that we have on recording. So, yeah, have a lovely evening, everybody.
Okay.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thomas. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.